Warning, some of the things that you're going to see in this video you may find upsetting. Viewer discretion is advised. 10 horrific British crimes and serial killers. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Coming in at number 10, and we have Peter Sutcliffe. Okay, so in the late 70s, Yorkshire was gripped by a terrifying wave of women being violently attacked and murdered. Dubbed the Yorkshire Ripper by the press, Peter Sutcliffe's crimes took place over a 5-year period between 1975 and 1980. He was convicted for the murders of 13 women and attempting to kill 7 others. The Ripper regularly used prostitutes in Leeds and other nearby areas, and his violence was thought to have been sparked after he was swindled out of money by a prostitute and her pimp. He told police that God had sent him on a mission to kill prostitutes, and in his trial he pleaded not guilty to murder on grounds of diminished responsibility after being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. It's been claimed that Sutcliffe could have murdered 8 more women. The 71-year-old was jailed in 1981 after police caught him with a 24-year-old prostitute called Olivia Rivers on January the 2nd. At number 9, and we have Dennis Nilsson. Dennis Nilsson was jailed for life in 1983 after murdering up to 15 men who he picked up from the streets. He strangled or drowned them before having sex with their corpses between 1978 and 1983. Dennis Nilsson is Britain's second worst serial killer behind Shipman. Nilsson, who was convicted of 6 murders and 2 attempted murders, was only caught when plumbers found human remains blocking the drain of his London flat. Depraved Nilsson, who would never have been released after being sentenced to a whole life term, was serving his sentence at maximum security HMP Full Sutton in Yorkshire when he died on May the 12th, 2018. Some of the most gruesome reports from the police is finding a human torso in a wardrobe and a decapitated human head in a boiling pot on the cooker. Number 8, and we have Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman is still the only British doctor to have been found guilty of murdering his patients. Born on January the 14th, 1946, Harold Shipman was a British GP who was one of the most prolific serial killers in recorded history. On January the 31st, 2000, a jury found Shipman guilty of 15 murders for killing patients under his care, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Shipman died in his cell at Wakefield Prison by committing suicide. The Shipman Inquiry examined his crimes and identified 218 victims, 80% of whom were elderly women. However, Shipman is believed to have killed up to 260 people between 1975 and 1998. The reasons behind these murders will never be explained due to Shipman's suicide, but reports have revealed that Shipman timed his suicide so his wife could cash in a £100,000 pension payout. Number 7, and we have Angus Sinclair. Angus Robertson Sinclair is a Scottish serial killer who raped and strangled his female victims. Born in 1945, he carried out numerous acts of rape, sexual assault and murder from the age of 16. In 1970, after getting out of prison for murdering an 8-year-old girl, he married trainee nurse Sarah Hamilton, who gave birth to their son 2 years later. In 2014, Sinclair's case made legal history when he was jailed for a minimum of 37 years for the murder of 2 teenage girls 4 decades before. Both girls had been beaten, gagged, tied, raped and strangled. The jail term was the longest handed out by a Scottish court, and it means that Sinclair will be 106 by the time he is eligible for parole, but he actually died at the age of 73 in the early hours of March the 11th, 2019. Number 6, and we have Fred and Rosemary West. The couple that kills together stays together, right? Well, not on this occasion. Fred and Rosemary West were a match made in hell. Over a span of 20 years, they tortured, raped, and murdered upwards of 13 victims, many in their Gloucester home. Fred was already a killer before he met Rose, and his influence was so strong that she even killed her stepdaughter, which was Fred's actual daughter, while Fred served out a separate prison sentence for theft. It wasn't until police had heard reports of a film of Fred raping one of his own daughters that the couple's awful crimes were finally revealed. Although the rape case was ultimately dropped, it led police on an investigation that uncovered the remains of Fred's daughter in the family's garden, and police soon apprehended the sadistic pair. Fred eventually hanged himself in 1995 while awaiting trial, and Rosemary West continues to serve a life sentence. At number 5, and we have Ian Huntley, the Soham murders. So Ian Huntley was a caretaker at Soham Village College in East Anglia, and he was arrested after the bodies of two 10-year-old girls, Holly and Jessica, were found near an RAF base. The girls were reported missing on Sunday, August the 4th, 2002, after going to a family barbecue. They had gone out to buy some sweets, and on the way home they walked past Ian Huntley's house. The caretaker invited them into his house where he murdered them. Their bodies were not found until more than a week later, 12 miles from Soham. On August the 17th, 2002, Huntley was arrested. He was eventually convicted in 2003 of the girls' murder and sentenced to 2 terms of life imprisonment. A High Court later set a minimum term of 40 years in jail. Huntley's girlfriend at the time, Maxine Carr, was the young girl's teaching assistant. She was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for perverting the course of justice after giving Ian a fake alibi. After Huntley's conviction, it was revealed that he had previously been investigated for sexual offences and burglary. There have since been many reports of Huntley being beaten up in prison, which I think is the least he deserves after what he did to those 2 girls. Still to this day, Ian Huntley has never told police the true story of what happened on that day. At number 4, and we have Mark Bridger. 5-year-old April Jones, a happy-go-lucky girl who had a mild form of cerebral palsy, was abducted while playing on a bicycle near her home in Sutcliffe, Wales. April vanished after being seen getting into a vehicle near her home, and local and national press immediately covered her disappearance and the appeal to find her. At the time, her mum made an emotional appeal about her daughter, which even led to Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, also issuing an appeal. A large search operation was launched in the area near her home, including police and search and rescue teams. The day after April vanished, a 46-year-old man, Mark Bridger, was arrested as he was found to match the description of the man in the vehicle that she had got into. Although April's body has never actually been discovered, DNA evidence found during the search convinced police that she had been brutally murdered. Mark Bridger claimed he could not remember what he did with April's body. The killer claimed at one point that he'd ran the 5-year-old over in his car accidentally. The biggest police search in Britain failed to track down April's remains and was finally called off. Bridger was charged with child abduction, murder, and attempting to pervert the course of justice, before being additionally charged with unlawful concealment and disposal of a body. Bridger was sentenced to life in prison. At number 3, and we have Stuart Hazel. Okay, so Tia Sharp was found brutally molested and smothered to death a few days after she went missing. The 12-year-old was staying at her grandma's house in New Addington before being reported missing. Her step-granddad, Stuart Hazel, he ended up making a heartfelt appeal on national television, appealing for his safe return after he had actually savagely killed her. He claimed that Tia had left the house to buy shoes in Croydon's Wit Gift Centre. Cops found Tia Sharp's body in her grandmother's attic on August the 2nd, 2012. After Hazel admitted to murdering the 12-year-old girl, a court heard that he had suffocated Tia when he was meant to be looking after her. Reports reveal that Hazel had actually photographed the 12-year-old's naked corpse before dressing it in pajamas and stashing it in the loft, then callously joined hundreds searching for the missing youngster. The killer was sentenced to 38 years behind bars. At number 2, and we have Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, the Moors murders. The Moors murders were carried out by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley between July 1963 and October 1965 in and around Manchester, England. The victims were 5 children: Pauline Reed, John Kilbride, Keith Bennett, Leslie Ann Downey, and Edward Evans, aged between 10 and 17, at least 4 of whom were sexually assaulted. Ian would use Myra as a way to get children to trust her and to jump into their car to help them find a missing glove. They would then drive the children out onto the moors, and Ian would then walk the children onto the moors, sexually assault them and kill them, and him and Myra would bury the children's bodies in the moors. Myra swears blind that she never participated in the murders. However, an audio tape was discovered by the police of one of the victims, which to this day has never been released to the public, as it's apparently the most disturbing piece of evidence that any UK police force has ever found. But the tape clearly showed that Myra definitely played a much bigger part in the killings than what she was making out. They were both sentenced to life in prison. And at Craig's top spot, number 1, and we have the murder of James Bulger. So, James Bulger was a happy 2-year-old boy who was from Liverpool. One day he was out with his mum, who was out shopping in a shopping centre. While James's mother Denise was paying, 2 young lads called Robert Thompson and John Venables took James by the hand, abducted him and lured him to his death. Robert Thompson and John Venables at the time were only 10-year-old boys. James Bulger's body was found 2 days after the boys, who were at the time playing truant from school, snatched him. James died on a railway embankment after suffering 42 injuries. To this day, the full extent of James's injuries have never ever been made public, but what has been made public is actually bad enough. Thompson and Venables tortured James. They threw heavy stones at him, beat him black and blue, stamped and jumped on him, and dropped a heavy bar on James's head. By the end of this harrowing and disgusting ordeal, they placed James on a railway line, and a train came and cut James's little body in half. After James's body was discovered, the whole world was shocked by what they were hearing. Not just the fact that James had been murdered, but the fact that his killers were 2 10-year-old boys. It rocked everyone to the core. The child murderers were sent to a young offenders institute, where they stayed until they were released at the age of 18 in 2001 with new identities. And of course, this has understandably angered people worldwide. And that was 10 horrific British crimes and serial killers. So guys, what did you think of my list? Let me know your thoughts in the comments box below. Okay guys, well if you're still here, then thank you all for sticking around until the end of the video. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe, and I will see you all again very soon.